Good God, this is what Marvel has come to. This is what behind the scenes they thought was going to be at least okay in terms of received. These are the characters that's going to be like half of the Avengers, or at least half the cast of Doomsday. No wonder they took the Hail Mary of bringing back RDJ and allegedly Chris Evans.
But then Chris Evans is playing Captain America, young Captain America, evil Captain America, and Captain Hydra, or something, that Lord Hydra, whatever that.
Because the Thunderbolts, it's nothing but a sign that the same Marvel shit is still coming, and lessons were not learned, at least not years ago when this was put into production. I don't know why this movie is called Thunderbolts and not something like Yelena, because this movie is just Marvel pushing Florence Pugh as hard as they can in the audience face, going, see? Like her, damn it. But all I do when I see her is just go, who is this sassy lost child? And then the rest of the cast is just there to be either the butt of her jokes, have name brand power recognition to try to bring in an audience, comedic relief, or they're trying to be part of some sort of emotional moment, have a really useful power that the writers exploit and then forget when they write themselves into a corner, or be a sacrificial death early on to try to make the audience go, oh man, everyone is expendable, the writers don't care who they are. I don't want to spoil too much of this super memorable movie that absolutely everyone is totally going to go see, but if you have seen the trailer, you have figured out which character I mean, because they are really only shown for a quick second in the trailer, and then they're strangely just absent during the rest of it. And also, their name kind of rhymes with Ass Master. But I digress, and let's get on with the story. The story of Thunderbolts is Madame Hydra, who's essentially just Julia Louise-Dreyfus playing her character from Veep, under investigation for some wrongdoings, like human experiments and stuff. She sends all the Thunderbolts, who I guess have been working for her since they were shunned from society, to get rid of evidence, and tries to trick them all into killing themselves since they are evidence themselves as well. So then they all fight each other, and after someone dies, kind of rhymes with Ass Master. And Bob, who will become Sentry later, gets let loose from a box. They discover this whole plot, which is dumb because as soon as they all show up to start fighting each other, probably should have figured out that there was something wrong and not wait for Walker to tell Florence Pugh the same story she was told about stealing evidence that allowed her to figure it out or whatever. So, Madame Veep then discovers through surveillance and her assistant that there's all this happening in the secret facility, and that Thunderbolts stop trying to kill each other, so she go ahead and tries to kill everyone by setting the place on fire remotely. They escape, and then Madame Veep, who really should have known about Bob before seeing him on surveillance, and then being told who he is, goes, oh wait, I actually want Bob to be alive, because he might actually not be a failed experiment. And then she just flies to the bunker place thing instantly with an army. Don't know where the bunker is, don't know how far away she is, she's just there now. But the Thunderbolts escape all of that as well, except Bob, whose sentry powers were activated. But he can't control them, so he ends up getting captured. Thunderbolts get saved by the Red Guardian, who knew where they were because now he apparently drives limos, and he worked his way to becoming the limo driver for Madame Veep the exact day she was doing stuff with limos, and then happened to be in the limo talking to the assistant about killing Yelena and all the others, and he also overheard the coordinates off screen. Yeah, because the head of the CIA doing very illegal and evil shit just wouldn't vet all of her drivers, limo or otherwise. But yeah, the Red Guardian picks up Thunderbolts, and then they get attacked. And then Bucky, who has this whole helping with the impeachment of Madame Veep subplot going on, shows up to save them, but not really. He ends up capturing them to use as evidence against Madame Veep. Notice how I keep using the phrase "and then." Lot of "and then" moments in this movie. Not great writing. So the Thunderbolts tell Bucky what is happening with Madame Veep, and he immediately gets confirmation that it's all true because Madame Veep's secretary calls him and says she doesn't really agree with what Madame Veep is doing all of a sudden. So then the Thunderbolts go to New York to the old Avengers Tower that the Veep now owns, and they confront her. But she has taught Sentry how to use his powers surprisingly quickly. He is all for working with her, and he just kind of kicks the Thunderbolts' asses. They run with the tails between their legs and go, "Oh man, he too strong. You know, you need like the real Avengers to do this and handle it." And they go their separate ways. Meanwhile, back up on the tower, Sentry is like, "Yeah, I'm a god, and I don't need to take orders from you, Veep." And Veep's assistant then turns him off or kills him because they made a dead switch or something when he was originally going through the experimentation. The original detonator thing was burned with all the other evidence, but assistant was told to make a new one, and apparently without all the evidence about how they built it or whatever, they could just recreate it in a matter of like a day or however long, don't know. But whatever, he's dead now, except he's not. It doesn't really work because the evil part of Sentry's bipolarness, called Void, takes over Bob's body and starts to kill everything and everyone by putting them in his void. The Thunderbolts reunite when all of them make the decision to start saving civilians from falling debris and wrecking cars and all the other things caused by the chaos of Void. Yelena then goes into Void's void and tries to talk to Bob about his mental health and loneliness. The rest of Thunderbolts eventually enter the void and help Bob as well by stopping him from becoming one with the void by punching the void a lot. This snaps them back to reality, and everyone that was sucked into the void is not really dead. They all return unharmed. And then the Thunderbolts try to arrest Veep, but she runs into a pen of media people she had set up and proclaims them the new Avengers. So she gets away with it, I guess. Don't know why they don't just out her right then and there, because Florence Pugh wants to be an Avenger. I don't know. It's dumb, and movie's over. The entire thing just felt like it was missing about half an hour of time. Between all the side stories and little moments that felt like setups, but weren't really setups to the awkward traveling and time and distance and all the character interactions, there just seemed to be a lot of connecting tissues missing or just wasted. There were so many characters they needed to do more with and so many different perspectives they could have used. In terms of like wasted opportunity, they showed that Yelena could kind of calm Bob down or at least get him to open up and talk a little bit. But they also showed that John Walker kind of winded him up and annoyed him. So you'd think that would be something related to like John's arc. He would say something that kind of kicks off the void and the evilness, or you know, when you think Yelena might bring her back, he says something and seals in and it still keeps kicking off. And then when they're in the void dealing with his mental health, he could have been one of the ones that actually relates to Bob and does some of the talking down. Because, I mean, he shared a similar perspective to Bob with the whole wanting to take a serum that made him stronger and idolizing some heroes. Not to mention when Bob is talking about falling into a void, when he gets sad, Walker can relate because he gets sad and angry about not being Captain America, and he kind of falls into a tunnel vision void thing too. But no, you get Yelena going, "Hey audience, remember Black Widow in the Red Room?" Oh, no, I don't. "Well, because of that, I know about the darkness and I live with it, but that makes it easier." And then Bob wants to then start fighting the void, and I don't know. Honestly, this movie and the dialogue are just so forgettable that that might be a bit wrong. But what I do remember is that it was dealt with a lot of vague nothing speech that didn't really deal with anything specific. Also, no one was really allowed to show or express their traumatic pasts, like, except for Yelena, who they even say something like, "Don't start a who has the worst past fight because I win." And the movie wants you to just kind of accept that it is true because they just gloss over everyone else. And you get to see some like really stupid thing about John Walker not watching his kid because he's reading an article about him not being Captain America and it's pissing him off. But the kid wasn't in danger doing anything stupid or seemingly that upset. I mean, yeah, the kid was clearly not happy and probably should have been consoled, but he wasn't crying all that much or like throwing a tantrum. So I don't know how that really made him a bad guy and made his wife want to leave him. And you know what? It's John Walker did nothing wrong in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, by the way. So yeah, let's just move on to the other characters and their trauma. Ghost just kept saying that, she grew up being experimented on in labs, and then you never really got to elaborate on that or deal with it or grow or share anything. It was just, I'm going to say this and people will know what I'm talking about because Ant-Man and the Wasp, but no one else, no other characters in this movie should know what that is. They shouldn't know Ant-Man and the Wasp. They shouldn't know who Ghost is. They didn't even really hint that much about knowing who she was from her also having worked for Veep. So that was just a huge problem with all this. Everyone acted like they've seen the other movies when they're characters that are B-level whatever that probably shouldn't know all of the things. Ghost was just purely there for her powers, which was severely underutilized. Okay, now the Bucky, we all know about Bucky and his past and how he should have been a great figure to look up to and teach everyone something. But that was not really touched or utilized. It was hinted at that he was going, "Hey, you all know who I am and everything I've done," which makes more sense for Bucky because, well, he's congressman now and he's a lot more bigger optics character. But then it didn't really go anywhere. Like, Bucky was just barely used at all. And then there was the Red Guardian, who I guess his trauma and regret was that communism fell, and he was just a stupid joke character that wasn't actually funny. And then there's Bob Century, and he's talking about his terrible past and these things that made him want to turn evil or have the void split personality bipolarness be formed, and he had an abusive dad and he did meth once. Kind of show it, that's pretty much all we really get. So yeah, despite what early reviews say about tackling mental health, they didn't really, or at least not effectively, in my opinion. I mean, they did literally tackle Bob in his head while Bob was punching his mental state, but that was just dumb. Mostly because of how and who started and everything. Because everyone was tied up with like metal and shit by the void, but Yelena got free thanks to the Red Guardian and started to save Bob, but she should not have been the first one to get free because, I mean, like, Bucky's a super soldier with a really strong fucking arm who could have broken at whenever. and they do show that. Same with the Red Guardian, but also, Walker is a super soldier as well, and he wasn't even tied up. He had like a piece of metal in his shoulder, pinning him to like a shelf or something. He had full leg and like 1.5 arms available, and he could have gotten free at any point. But most importantly, Ghost was there and can phase through metal, and at no point did they show that she could not do that in the Void world. And they didn't have the magic turn off her powers sound playing that they used throughout the movie to shut her down. So Ghost could have gotten out at any point too. But no, they all read the script and they knew to wait for Florence Pugh to go first because this is really her movie. It's not a team up. It's not a multiple characters thing. Not like a Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a Yelena movie. It is just dumb how much everyone is underutilized to shove Florence Pugh down your face, and they expect you to care about any of them and how they'll be in Doomsday. And don't get me wrong, Florence Pugh is not a terrible actress. Her Russian accent isn't the best, and you'd think with her character being a super trained spy that she'd be able to just change her accent whenever she wants. But you know what? We don't even see her really do anything that spy-like. And Florence Pugh trying to be intimidating or to do fight scenes, I'm sorry, but that just does not really work for me. She's 5'0" and isn't really built to be like a femme fatale fighter kind of way. Neither her or her stunt double do anything to give off that kind of believability in her skills like Scarlet and her team did. And then there's like Veep, who was not scary or intimidating or impressive at all as a villain. I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus phoned it in, did the things that she knows, and I just do not care about her or her motivations or her plan. They all felt kind of dumb and made not that much sense. It's like she was doing a thing with the boys of turned a person into a superhero to try to make herself look good, like she's the new Nick Fury, but then she picked someone with that bipolarism, so it backfired. And she's not afraid to kill people. And then there was the action, which was forgettable, and then the humor that was mostly just shitting on John Walker because he is a man, and that was just cringe and unfunny.
God only knows the blood on your hands.
Pretty ludicrous coming from the dime store Captain America.
I'll have you know I was actually the official Captain America, so.
Yeah, for like 2 seconds.
All in all, I went into this movie not expecting much, but I walked away still not liking any of the characters and having to accept that we will never get a good Bucky story again.
And this goes on and back and forth for 90 or so minutes until the movie just sort of ends.